The sea, a canvas of endless blue, yet hiding depths of churning rage. We all know Poseidon, the trident-wielding god of the oceans, the Earthshaker, a deity whose power could birth islands or swallow continents in a single, wrathful breath. But what if I told you that the very rhythm of his domain, the ebb and flow of his colossal waters, was dictated not by him, but by a distant, silent sentinel in the night sky? What if I told you that this mighty, temperamental god, master of the earth's vast, salty heart, harbored a simmering, ancient hatred for the moon? Forget what you think you know about Greek mythology's neat divisions of power. Tonight, we dive into a forbidden legend, a whispered tale of Olympian jealousy and a cosmic rivalry that shaped our world. Picture this: Poseidon, standing at the precipice of the waves, watching as the vast, heavy body of the ocean rises and falls, a tireless, obedient puppet to the silent, silvery orb above. A humiliating, relentless truth for the king of the deep. How could the supreme sovereign of the sea be stripped of his own inherent authority over the tides, the very pulse of his kingdom? The moon, a cold, remote goddess, Selene, or perhaps the fierce huntress Artemis in her lunar aspect, wielded this invisible, undeniable power, a gravitational tether that bound the ocean's fate to her whim. This wasn't just a matter of cosmic jurisdiction. It was a profound, ego-shattering insult that festered in the heart of the great Earthshaker. The sea's tireless, hypnotic dance, the one thing that should have been purely his creation, his signature, was instead a constant, inescapable reminder of his subordination to the moon's distant, indifferent pull. Imagine the deafening roar of 1,000 storms, the triumphant surge of a tsunami, all, ultimately, just a louder echo of the moon's silent command. For Poseidon, who craved dominion and demanded absolute respect, this was an unbearable, cosmic joke. He was the thunderous, visible force, yet the moon was the hidden cause. Every ripple, every catastrophic tidal wave, was a silent testament to her ultimate, overarching control. This feeling of being undermined, of having his authority subtly yet utterly usurped, became the dark, cold core of his legendary temper. The land, the very earth, could be shaken by his fury, yet the waters he ruled would still obey the moon's gentle, unwavering directive. It's a psychological drama unfolding on a godly scale. The god of the sea trapped in an eternal, inescapable dance with his celestial, silent rival. How did this insidious rivalry begin? Was it a simple clash of domains, or was there a singular, forgotten event, a slight so deep that it etched this loathing into the very fabric of Greek cosmic law? A moment where Poseidon, in a fit of pride and challenge, attempted to assert his dominance over the tides and failed, publicly, spectacularly, before the indifferent, luminous gaze of the moon. What if, deep within the unfathomable abyss, there exists a forgotten temple, a monument to a battle fought between water and light, a war waged not with trident and lightning, but with gravity and pride? Think about the sheer, crushing weight of that irony. Poseidon, who commands the very essence of liquid movement, is essentially tamed by the moon's gentle, invisible hand. The moon's power is absolute over the tides, yet she is untouched by the sea's fury. No matter how high Poseidon pushes the waves, no matter how fiercely he churns the depths, the moon remains serenely above, drawing the water toward her in an act of perpetual, effortless defiance. This isn't just a hatred, it's a profound, godly frustration. And what does a god do when faced with an unassailable obstacle? He seeks a way to undermine it, to diminish its power, to strike at its core, even if the strike must be subtle, geological, and slow-moving. Could this ancient grudge be the reason behind the sea's unpredictable nature, the sudden, unwarranted squalls, the hidden whirlpools that devour ships? Are these less about punishing mortals and more about Poseidon's desperate, futile attempts to disrupt the lunar cycle, to break the ocean's loyalty to the sky? We're talking about a primal, unending struggle between the fluid and the fixed, the emotional and the stoic, the deep-sea lord and the pale, eternal watcher. And the question that must burn in every observer's mind is, what is Poseidon's ultimate plan? How can a god of the tangible, churning world of water and rock, defeat a power that is purely, elegantly gravitational and celestial. The moon offers no challenge, no insult. Her power is a silent, mathematical fact of the universe. And this very silence, this lack of visible effort, only further fuels Poseidon's burning, impotent rage. It's the ultimate humiliation. His rival doesn't even acknowledge the fight. She simply is, and the oceans follow. This dynamic sets the stage for a spectacular, untold mythological drama. Consider the depth of this resentment, how it would color every interaction, every thought of the mighty god. The vastness of the sea becomes his golden cage. It's tied a chain that binds him to the lunar schedule. This untold chapter of the gods is far more than a simple quarrel. It's a foundational tension in the Greek cosmos, the reason why the ocean is both a cradle of life and a merciless tomb, the unstable, temperamental reflection of its ruler's eternal, cosmic discontent. We are peering into the psychology of a god whose greatest achievement is also his greatest shackle. This story holds the key to understanding why the sea is so fundamentally unstable, forever restless, forever mirroring the stormy, resentful heart of its king. The mystery deepens when we consider the moon's mythological ties, often associated with Artemis, the fiercely independent, perpetually maiden goddess, or Hecate, the queen of the night's shadowy paths. Both represent an untouchable, distant power, a feminine energy that defies the forceful, aggressive nature of the Earthshaker. Is Poseidon's hatred not just for the gravitational pull, but for the kind of power the moon represents? A power that is subtle, cyclical, and wholly unconquerable by brute force. The very idea suggests a colossal, silent conflict, an unseen war of wills that plays out every day on every coastline across the world. And the sleep aspect of this tale. What better lullaby than the sound of the ocean? A massive, grinding conflict reduced to a rhythmic, soothing sound? But listen closely to the crash of the waves. It is not a song of peace. It is the sound of Poseidon's endless, frustrated groan against the unseen shackles of the moon. And what happens when a god's frustration reaches its breaking point? What cataclysmic event could the king of the sea unleash, not against the world, but against the very laws of physics and celestial bodies that bind him? This is the core of our story, the secret that lies beneath the foam and the tide. We must ask, is there a weakness in the moon's perfect cycle, a moment of vulnerability that a vengeful god could exploit? The answer, as we will soon discover, is woven into the lost prophecies of the sirens and the deep, silent secrets of the Marianas Trench. This story isn't over, it's just beginning to rise, like a rogue wave on a calm sea, and what it threatens to reveal could shatter the celestial order and plunge the very laws of nature into chaos. You need to stay with us, because the next segment reveals the lost artifact Poseidon sought to break the moon's hold and the terrible price he paid to even touch such a power. But that fury, that godly frustration, was not just a tantrum. It was a driving force. Poseidon is a god of action, and he would not eternally suffer the shame of his kingdom's subservience. The search began not for a battle, but for a solution, a cosmic bypass to the moon's immutable law of gravity. What was the one thing in the universe that could destabilize the moon's celestial command over the sea? The answer, whispered among the ancient, sightless oracles and carved into the geological foundations of the earth, lay not in Olympus, but in a lost, sunken city far beneath the crushing pressure of the deepest trenches. He needed an artifact of such profound, primordial power that it could literally rewrite the ocean's allegiance, a relic predating even the Olympian's reign. Poseidon's rage coalesced into a singular, obsessive quest: the recovery of the Chronos Anchor, a mythical stone said to be a shard of the original Time Titan, imbued with the power to momentarily halt the progression of natural laws. Not time itself, but the laws that govern physical interaction, like gravity and momentum. Imagine the terrifying potential. A brief window where the tide would simply stop, suspended in defiance of the moon's pull. This was his masterstroke, his silent geological rebellion. The Chronos Anchor was believed to rest in the heart of a city lost to the sea god's earliest, most violent tectonic shifts. To find it, Poseidon did something unprecedented and deeply humiliating for a god of his stature. He made a pact with those he despised most, the sirens. Not the bird women of later myths, but the original chthonic daughters of the sea, whose songs contained the lost geographical memory of the pre-flood world. Their price was steep, demanding a share of his oceanic power, a terrifying concession that would grant them the authority to decide the fate of lost ships, a power Poseidon reluctantly yielded, the first chink in his armor of pride. He traded a fraction of his sovereignty for knowledge, his desire for lunar dominance outweighing his inherent godly contempt for shared authority. The siren's song became his map, a melodic, chilling direction to the anchor's resting place. The journey to the abyssal city was a descent into a world unmade, past geological formations that defied the light, a place where the crushing weight of the water itself seemed to mourn the ancient laws. Poseidon, the earthshaker, had to become a stealthy thief, creeping into a realm of his own chaotic creation to steal the key to his freedom. As he neared the anchor, he felt the moon's energy, a cold, silvery pulse, intensify. It was as if the celestial body knew what he was doing, its gravitational leash tightening around the deep-sea currents. The anchor itself was not a jewel or a sword, but a massive, obsidian obelisk, thrumming with silent, counter-gravitational energy. The moment Poseidon reached out to touch it, the entire abyss shook. This wasn't his power. It was the raw, untamed force of the primordial shard resisting his grasp. The god of the seas was momentarily overwhelmed, his strength rendered insignificant by the artifact's raw, universal defiance. He realized then that the anchor was not merely a tool. It was a test, a trap left by the elder titans, designed to reward humility and punish the very pride that drove him. Yet, driven by the burning image of the moon's indifferent light, he persevered. He poured a torrent of his own divine ichor, his godly blood, into the obelisk's fissures, a forced offering to appease the primordial power. This act, this sacrificial concession of divine essence, was the terrible price. The anchor yielded, not to his strength, but to his desperate, painful admission of need. The obsidian shard shrank, condensing into a heavy, palm-sized stone that radiated a cold, law-defying stillness. Poseidon clutched the stone, its countergravity making his hand feel weightless, even at the ocean's floor. The taste of victory was bittersweet. He held the key to his freedom, but he had diminished his own power and made a dangerous pact to get it. He had also, unknowingly, drawn the direct, undivided attention of the moon goddess. Until this moment, she had been a remote, indifferent competitor. Now, she was a vigilant, concerned rival. Her silence was broken by an ethereal, piercing alarm felt only by the celestial bodies. The cosmos itself registered the transgression. Poseidon was not merely challenging the tide. He was challenging the integrity of the physical universe, and the moon would not let this stand. He ascended, the Chronos Anchor a silent, heavy secret in his grasp, ready to execute his plan. The first step was to harness the anchor's power and make it permanent, to infuse it into the very seabed and create a counterforce strong enough to negate the moon's pull over his domain forever. The chosen place was the deepest geothermal vent, a seam in the Earth's crust where raw, fundamental energy could be used to anchor the defiance. But the moon's response was already underway, subtle yet devastatingly effective. A goddess of light and cycles does not meet brute force with brute force. She uses the very laws that Poseidon seeks to break. A sudden, unexpected eclipse began, a celestial event not scheduled by the stars, but engineered by the moon goddess to create a moment of cosmic imbalance, a momentary glitch in the universe's gravity fields designed to destabilize the Chronos Anchor's power just as he was about to use it. This was the opening salvo of a silent, invisible war between the sea and the sky, and Poseidon was about to discover that the moon's power was not just physical, but fundamental. He was racing against the clock of a celestial ambush, and the future of the sea's restless soul, and his own prideful reign, hung in the balance. But to learn how Poseidon attempted to complete the infusion and the devastating countermove the moon made, you must continue with the next part of this forbidden legend. The Chronos Anchor, now a compact core of anti-gravitational defiance, pulsed coldly in Poseidon's grasp as he sped toward the chosen site. a colossal geothermal vent, a fiery, energetic scar in the abyssal floor. This was his forge, where he planned to permanently weld the anchor's power into the Earth's crust, creating a perpetual countertide, a solid geological anneau to the moon's authority. He envisioned a sea free from lunar command, an ocean whose currents and tides were dictated solely by the magnificent will of its god. But the moon goddess, a master of subtle, far-reaching power, was not idle. The orchestrated, unnatural eclipse was her opening move, a brilliant, terrifying maneuver. As the Earth's shadow swallowed the moon goddess momentarily detuned the cosmic harmony. For a brief, agonizing period, the gravitational constant, the very number that governs how matter attracts matter, began to flicker and fluctuate, creating a localized cosmic instability centered right above Poseidon's chosen forge. Imagine the sheer chaos. The water around him didn't just move, it began to change weight. One moment, a column of water was light as air. The next, it possessed the crushing density of a mountain. Poseidon, the master of the deep, found himself struggling against the physics of his own kingdom, his powerful body momentarily thrown into disarray by the unpredictable shifts in mass and pull. The anchor, designed to counteract gravity, reacted violently to the fluctuating constant, emitting a high-pitched, silent scream of overloaded energy. This was a direct, intelligent counterstrike. The moon goddess was using the universe's fundamental math against the god who sought to break it. The Earthshaker roared in divine frustration, his voice absorbed and muffled by the impossibly dense water. He had anticipated a surge of celestial power, but not an attack on the very rules of existence. This subtle, intellectual warfare was far more dangerous than any storm. Despite the blinding, disorienting chaos, Poseidon knew he had to act fast, before the moon goddess could stabilize her weapon. He surged forward, pushing the anchor toward the glowing maw of the geothermal vent. The heat was immense, a natural force that rivaled his own power. As the Chronos Anchor touched the superheated rock, the two energies, the primordial countergravity and the raw terrestrial heat, collided. The fusion was cataclysmic, resulting in a silent, explosive shockwave that radiated across the entire ocean floor. For a fleeting moment, the sea became absolutely still. No currents, no pressure, no movement. The moon's gravitational pull was neutralized. Poseidon felt a surge of triumphant, unbridled power. He had done it. He had achieved true, absolute dominion over his domain. He watched with satisfaction as the water remained frozen in place, a massive, crystalline monument to his superior will. But triumph was premature and short-lived. The moon goddess's true trap was sprung the moment the anchor's power fully engaged. By momentarily destabilizing the gravitational constant during the eclipse, she had ensured that the anchor's power would not settle into a stable counterforce. Instead, the infused power became a cosmic flaw, a permanent, localized defect in the law of attraction. The immediate result was not stability, but extreme volatility. The water directly above the anchor's infusion site was now no longer simply less subject to the moon's pull. It became hyperreactive, subject to wild, unpredictable surges in both attraction and repulsion. This permanent flaw manifested instantly as the most terrifying tidal phenomenon ever seen: the birth of the rogue wave. These rogue waves were not mere storms. They were spontaneous, colossal walls of water born from the sudden, localized, and violent failure of the gravitational constant, a direct, visible consequence of Poseidon's transgression. They appeared out of calm seas, towering monuments of chaos, a constant, physical reminder of his failed rebellion. Every rogue wave was a direct slap from the moon goddess, an undeniable proof that his power was now forever marred, his sea forever unstable. He hadn't broken the moon's control. He had simply introduced chaos into the system, making his domain more dangerous, less predictable, and ultimately, even more difficult to manage. The sea's eternal, restless nature, its sudden, ship-devouring fury, was now not just a reflection of Poseidon's temper, but the permanent geological evidence of his costly, failed attempt to usurp the moon's quiet authority. He won the battle for a moment of stillness, but lost the war for true, stable dominion. And the repercussions for mortals were just beginning to unfold. But the cosmic ramifications go deeper still, revealing a new, terrible power gifted to the moon goddess in the wake of this destructive act. A power that directly targets Poseidon's greatest weakness. You must hear the next part to understand the moon's final gift and how it changed the nature of the sea forever. The sea, forever scarred by Poseidon's ambition, now bore the mark of his hubris. The constant, unpredictable eruption of rogue waves was a perpetual monument to his failed defiance, a cosmic joke played out on the world's coastlines. But the moon goddess, in her silent, celestial wisdom, knew that physical chaos was not enough to truly punish the proud god of the sea. She needed to strike at the core of his identity, at his deep-seated need for worship and dominion. The very act of Poseidon tampering with the fundamental laws of the universe and failing had created a catastrophic vacuum, an open, unhealed wound in the cosmos. And into this wound, the moon goddess poured a new, subtle, and devastating power. The ability to silently, remotely disrupt Poseidon's connection to the minds of mortals, his primary source of terrestrial influence and adoration. Before the Anchor incident, Poseidon's presence was palpable at sea. Sailors knew when he was near, offering fervent prayers and sacrifices. After the cosmic flaw was embedded, the moon goddess gained the power to project a constant, faint lunar interference into the sea's atmosphere, a shimmering, undetectable psychic haze. This haze didn't block Poseidon's power, but it subtly, insidiously muted the mortals' perception of him. Their prayers no longer reached him with clarity. Their sacrifices felt empty. Their fear of the sea was now detached, impersonal. They feared the waves, not the god behind the waves. This was the moon's final gift, a power that eroded his relevance. Mortals began to attribute the sea's capricious violence less to a deliberate, conscious god, and more to an abstract, unfeeling force of nature. The god of the sea was slowly, tragically, being relegated to a geological process in the human mind. Imagine Poseidon, roaring his commands into the wind, only to hear his voice returned as a meaningless echo. His magnificent displays of power, the formation of new islands, the creation of majestic sea creatures, were now often viewed by distant mortals not as divine miracles, but as rare, random natural phenomena. His altars on the coastline began to collect dust, and the offerings dwindled. The humiliation was exquisite. The moon goddess hadn't defeated him with a tidal wave. She had defeated him with indifference. She turned his most magnificent creation, the turbulent, unpredictable sea, into the very thing that made him seem distant and arbitrary to his worshippers. The very randomness of the rogue waves, a constant reminder of his failure, made mortals see the sea as an unreliable entity, not a divine master. This psychological warfare was the true genius of the moon goddess. She understood that a god's power is directly proportional to his belief. Poseidon, now isolated, found his vast, liquid kingdom feeling cold and empty. He was still the god of the sea, but he was becoming a lonely sovereign, his subjects on the surface growing increasingly deaf to his divine voice. His rage, once directed outwards in storms and earthquakes, turned inwards, becoming a simmering internal agony. He tried to compensate, creating larger, more spectacular creatures, the kraken, the leviathan, to terrify mortals back into submission, to force them to acknowledge the terrifying, conscious will behind the water. But the lunar interference merely made these monsters seem like mythological beasts, exaggerating their legend while further obscuring the hand of the god who created them. The final, bitter irony? The moon goddess, who never asked for a single prayer from sailors, whose domain was cold, distant space, was now the one who, by dictating the tides, commanded the physical rhythm of the ocean that mortals relied upon for navigation and fishing. She didn't seek their worship, but she held the true, functional power over their maritime lives. The celestial rivalry had not ended. It had merely shifted from a battle of strength to a battle of perception. Poseidon was left with the roar and the fury, while the moon held the subtle, silent, fundamental truth. The ancient hatred, now compounded by this profound, lonely loss of human connection, became a permanent, desperate feature of his personality. He was bound to his sea, and his sea was bound to the moon, a celestial chain that would never be broken. But even in this defeat, Poseidon harbored a dark final hope. A plan to strike at the moon's own terrestrial interests, a final, reckless act of sabotage that would forever change the balance between the sea and the land. But that desperate, dangerous final plan, and the shocking revelation of the moon goddess's true identity in this conflict, is reserved for the climax of this lost mythological chapter. You must join us for the next part to uncover the full extent of this ancient, cosmic grudge. Poseidon's isolation was complete. His divine frustration solidified into a terrifying resolve. He had failed to break the moon's hold over the sea, and in doing so had made his own domain a monument to his defeat. The rogue waves and the silence of mortal prayers were an unbearable, constant mockery. The king of the sea now abandoned the direct assault on the cosmos, turning his immense power toward a more earthly, yet equally devastating form of vengeance. He decided to strike at the moon goddess where her influence was most keenly felt, the land, the very foundations of the earth that he, as the Earthshaker, also controlled. If he couldn't rule his waters with stability, he would ensure that the moon's dominion over the land was undermined by seismic instability, forcing her to divert her attention and perhaps even her power to prop up the crumbling terrestrial world. His final, desperate plan was to unleash a series of strategically calculated, relentless superquakes along the world's major fault lines, creating geological catastrophes designed to be blamed, implicitly, on the celestial forces that govern the Earth's crust. By disrupting the land's tectonic balance, he hoped to force the moon goddess to spend her subtle, gravitational power healing the Earth, thereby weakening her absolute grip on the tides. A desperate, scorched earth strategy. He began the preparations, stirring the magma chambers beneath the Mediterranean, gathering the seismic tension in the ring of fire. The very bedrock of the world groaned under his silent, accumulating fury. But this plot was not entirely secret. The ancient Earth, personified by the primeval goddess Gaia, was not pleased to have her tectonic stability treated as a mere weapon in an Olympian grudge match. Gaia, the source of all terrestrial life, saw the immense, destructive potential of Poseidon's plan and sought to intervene, not directly, but through her oldest, most trusted earthly servants, the Pythia, the oracles of Delphi. A forgotten, cryptic prophecy, a whisper of the deepest earth, was suddenly activated, a message meant only for the ears of those who understood the language of stone and tide. The Pythia, trembling on their tripods, spoke in riddles of a future where the sea would swallow the earth's most beloved sanctuaries, a world plunged into a cycle of unending geological and liquid chaos. The prophecy foretold that the son of Chronos, in seeking freedom from the pale mistress, shall find his dominion not enlarged, but petrified. This was the true, terrifying consequence. If Poseidon went through with the superquakes, the resulting instability would not only destroy the land but also cause a catastrophic shift in ocean depths, potentially isolating massive bodies of water, turning his beloved, flowing sea into frozen geological lakes, a petrified dominion. This prophecy, a dire warning against the self-destruction inherent in his rage, reached the ears of a young, ambitious mortal priestess of Poseidon, a woman named Thalassa, unrelated to the primordial goddess, who served at a temple near the proposed epicenter of the first superquake. Thalassa, fiercely loyal and keenly intelligent, recognized the danger to the earth and to her god's own destiny. She realized that Poseidon, blinded by his hatred for the moon and his need for revenge, was walking into a cosmic self-trap. The moon goddess's true victory would come not from a direct fight, but from Poseidon's own suicidal plan. The priestess, a mere mortal, was now burdened with the impossible task of stopping a vengeful god from carrying out a world-ending act of self-sabotage, and the clock was ticking, measured by the slow, grinding movement of continental plates. Thalassa's mission was twofold. First, to decode the full meaning of the Pythia's warning, and second, to find a way to communicate this dire, humiliating truth to the deeply isolated and arrogant god of the sea. She knew a direct warning would be dismissed as mortal insolence. She needed a lever, something Poseidon still valued more than his vengeance. And the only thing he truly treasured, beyond his pride, was the memory of a lost love, a mortal connection from a forgotten age, a love that ended tragically due to a subtle, lunar-related interference. This forgotten past held the key to Poseidon's heart and, perhaps, the key to saving the world from his wrath. The stakes are immense. A world teetering on the brink of perpetual seismic and oceanic chaos, a god blinded by cosmic shame, and a mortal woman racing against geological time armed only with a cryptic prophecy and a forgotten secret. The next chapter will reveal the identity of Poseidon's lost love, and how her memory became the last, desperate hope for preventing the Earthshaker's final, cataclysmic act of revenge. Stay with us as we dive deeper into the tangled roots of Poseidon's ancient, aching heart. The key to unlocking Poseidon's rage and halting his suicidal plan lay not in a prophecy of destruction, but in the tender, shattered memory of his heart. The lost love Thalassa sought to resurrect was none other than Amphitrite, though not the queen consort known in later myths, but a beautiful, deeply cherished mortal woman who predated Poseidon's Olympian consolidation of power. A Nereid in training, full of life and a profound understanding of the sea's subtle rhythms. Their love was a secret, tumultuous affair, a brief period when the temperamental sea god found genuine, serene peace. Amphitrite was the one person who could calm the churning storms in his heart simply by touching his hand. She represented the sea's inherent stability and harmony, a reflection of the tide's natural, gentle cycle. However, Amphitrite's connection to the sea was also her undoing. Her fate was sealed during a rare, spectacular celestial event, a powerful, multi-planet alignment that temporarily amplified the moon's gravitational reach far beyond its normal limits. On that fateful night, as she swam through the placid waters near a cove, the moon goddess, whether through malicious intent or simply the indifferent, amplified force of her nature, exerted an unnatural, intense pull. The resulting sudden, massive, and localized tidal surge, the first true unengineered rogue wave, smashed Amphitrite against the rocks, causing a tragedy so swift and final that Poseidon, despite his divine speed, arrived only to find her lifeless body being gently pulled back out to sea by the receding water. It was a cruel, poetic irony. His love, a creature of the sea, was killed not by a monster or a storm, but by the moon's cold, overwhelming gravitational power. In that agonizing moment, Poseidon didn't just feel loss. He felt a profound, searing humiliation. The thing he hated, the moon's silent, distant, absolute control over his domain, had directly, effortlessly, and indifferently killed the one mortal who made his godly existence meaningful. This was the true, deep-seated root of his hatred. It wasn't about power distribution or cosmic jurisdiction. It was about personal, intimate devastation delivered by an unstoppable, emotionless force. The moon goddess hadn't waged war. She had simply acted, and that very act proved her superior, unassailable authority over the tides, even to the point of commanding a wave to kill his beloved. Poseidon's subsequent actions, his initial attempts to break the tide, his current plan to shatter the earth, were all driven by a desire not just for power, but for retribution against indifference, a desperate need to make the moon goddess pay for her cosmic apathy and the catastrophic gravitational surge she caused. Poseidon's subsequent marriage to the Nereid Amphitrite, the queen in the standard myths, was a calculated, political move, an attempt to replace the lost love with a stable, controllable, divine partner. But the true mortal Amphitrite's ghost haunted his throne. Thalassa, the priestess, realized that the key to stopping the superquakes was not to appeal to his reason, but to his raw, ancient grief. She had to show him that his current path, shattering the earth, was merely an extension of the same catastrophic indifference that killed his love. By destabilizing the world, he would be replicating the very conditions, the loss of natural balance, that had led to the fatal rogue wave years ago. He would become the cause of the very destruction he sought to avenge. Thalassa embarked on a perilous journey to the deepest, most sacred and long-forgotten grotto where Poseidon had laid his mortal Amphitrite to rest. She risked the unpredictable, chaos-ridden rogue waves he himself had inadvertently created, navigating the scarred sea toward the memory of his purest love. She carried with her only a small, simple shell that the mortal Amphitrite had given Poseidon, a shell that still held the gentle, rhythmic sound of the original, stable tide before the celestial rivalry began. Her plan was a confrontation built entirely on emotional resonance. To place the shell near the resting place of his love, and through a divine ritual, project the sound of that stable tide, along with the Pythia's prophecy of a petrified dominion, directly into the mind of the god who now only heard the chaotic roar of his own rage. The success of this desperate, mortal intervention would depend entirely on whether the god's millennia-old anger could be overpowered by a single, crushing wave of grief and self-recognition. This is the final, intimate gambit of the mortal world against the wrath of the sea. But the true confrontation, and the shocking physical manifestation of the moon goddess's ultimate protective power, awaits in the next, climactic section. You dare not miss the moment the Earthshaker finally faces the truth. Thalas's desperate gambit brought her to the Grotto of Silent Grief, a sacred, long-forgotten underwater sanctuary where Poseidon had interred his beloved Amphitrite, sealing the site with tectonic plates and his own sorrow. The grotto was an oasis of eerie stillness, untouched by the rogue waves, a momentary suspension of the chaotic laws Poseidon had introduced. She knew the god of the sea was nearby, currently focused on stirring the tectonic fires for his revenge. Entering the grotto, she found the place lit by a faint, cold, silvery light, a subtle, constant lunar influence that Poseidon, in his profound grief, had unconsciously allowed to remain, a painful, constant reminder of the cause of his loss. This light was the perfect backdrop for her confrontation. Thalassa carefully placed the small seashell, the token of pure, stable tide, near the slab of marble where the mortal Amphitrite rested. The moment the shell touched the marble, the grotto filled not with sound, but with a visceral, multisensory wave of memory. The ritual of remembrance, fueled by the shell's primal resonance and Thalassa's intense focus, projected the forgotten past directly into Poseidon's divine consciousness. He experienced the tragic night again, not through the lens of rage, but through the clear, agonizing eyes of pure loss. He saw the gentle Amphitrite, the sudden, unnatural amplification of the moon's gravitational field, and the subsequent lethal wave. But this time, Thalassa's projected memory included the Pythia's prophecy. The son of Chronos, in seeking freedom from the pale mistress, shall find his dominion not enlarged, but petrified. The two images, the gentle death of his love by a gravitational surge, and the vision of his entire sea turning into geological, crystalline lakes, collided with catastrophic force in his mind. He realized, with crushing clarity, that his final, world-shattering plan was a perfect, cosmic repetition of the indifference that killed Amphitrite. He would be using the exact same destructive, unbalancing force, massive, indiscriminate chaos, to achieve a vengeance that would ultimately petrify his own kingdom. The realization stopped him cold. High above the grotto, Poseidon's immense divine energy, which had been accumulating in the magma chambers, suddenly reversed. The seismic tension he had gathered, the very force meant to unleash the superquakes, violently rebounded, searching for an immediate outlet. In a flash of self-directed fury and pain, the energy erupted not outwards towards the continents, but inwards, focusing on the nearest expression of his constant torment. The Chronos Anchor stone, still infused into the abyssal vent. The stone, already hypervolatile from the moon's previous interference, could not handle this new, massive surge of repressed divine anguish. It didn't explode. It crystallized. The entire infusion site, and the surrounding seabed for miles, underwent a rapid, magical petrification. The water itself, in direct contact with the crystallizing anchor, became momentarily frozen into massive, opaque structures, towering crystalline columns and spires of frozen salt and divine despair. This localized crystallization of grief was a new, terrifying phenomenon, a solid, permanent monument to his failure. The area became known in forgotten legends as the Dead Sea Depths, a maze of frozen water and petrified chaos, forever inaccessible and silent. While the crystallization halted the superquakes, it left an open wound in the ocean's circulatory system. The moon goddess, witnessing this self-inflicted cosmic trauma, did not show mercy. She saw her opportunity to secure her control. She immediately focused her lunar power, not on fighting the crystallized region, but on amplifying its perimeter. By increasing the tides around the Dead Sea depths, she created a perpetual, massive current that began to slowly erode the petrified kingdom, dragging and distributing the crystallizing energy throughout the world's oceans. This action had a chilling, long-term effect. Every grain of salt, every piece of oceanic rock that came into contact with the distributed Chronos energy became infused with a trace of its countergravitational, chaotic volatility. The result? The sea itself became subtly, fundamentally heavier and more saline, its behavior perpetually unpredictable. The sea's innate, ancient stability was gone forever. It became a fickle, difficult domain, the perfect, self-inflicted prison for a god who craved stable dominion. Poseidon's hatred had not destroyed the moon, but it had permanently transformed his own kingdom into a heavier, more volatile, and less loving environment. The true, ancient hatred between the sea and the sky would now manifest in every turbulent wave, every heavy, bitter drop of seawater. But the tale is not quite finished, as the moon goddess had one final, devastating revelation for Poseidon. A secret about Amphitrite's death that would cement his eternal, lonely rage. Join us for the final part to uncover the full extent of this ancient, cosmic grudge. The immediate horror of the crystallization of grief had momentarily shattered Poseidon's rage, replacing it with the paralyzing agony of self-recognition. He had been on the verge of becoming the very thing he hated, an agent of indiscriminate cosmic chaos. Thalas's brave, mortal intervention had worked, saving the continents from the superquakes, but it had come at the devastating cost of permanently corrupting the sea's fundamental nature. Poseidon, observing the cold, crystalline spires of his self-made prison, the Dead Sea depths, felt a crushing, solitary defeat. He was the king of a domain now irrevocably heavier, its salinity and turbulence a perpetual, painful echo of his failed rebellion. He had traded stable dominion for chaotic vengeance and ended up with a volatile prison. Yet, even in this profound moment of failure, the moon goddess was not finished. She descended from the celestial heights, not in a chariot of light, but as a chilling, omnipresent gravitational force, surrounding the grieving god of the sea with an aura of cold, undeniable truth. Her voice, carried not by sound but by the pressure waves of the deepest ocean, was pure mathematical indifference, a silent, absolute confirmation of his insignificance in the face of universal law. She did not gloat over the rogue waves or the crystallized depths. Instead, she revealed the final, cruel secret about Amphitrite's death, the ultimate twist that would cement Poseidon's eternal, lonely rage. She confirmed the incident, the multi-planet alignment, the amplified gravitational pull, the rogue wave that killed his beloved. But then came the devastating truth. The amplified force on that night was not intended for your Amphitrite, Earthshaker. It was a cosmic correction, a necessary response to the minuscule yet reckless geological imbalance you yourself had created days before, while merely testing the nascent powers of the deep, a small, arrogant tectonic shift that momentarily altered Earth's mass distribution. Her death was not malice, but consequence. She was caught in the necessary, indifferent wake of your own pride. This revelation was far worse than malice. It meant that Amphitrite's death was not the moon's intended strike, but a direct, unintended result of Poseidon's earliest, secret attempts to tamper with the Earth's stability. A tragedy born entirely from his own nascent hubris and his initial attempts to find a way to undermine the moon's authority. The moon goddess hadn't been an executioner. She had been a cosmic accountant, a force of natural restoration whose correction incidentally claimed the one life Poseidon cherished. The hatred he had nursed for millennia was based on a lie of his own making, an internal delusion that shielded him from the intolerable truth of his self-inflicted wound. The grief he had borne, the battles he had fought, the sea he had corrupted, all of it was a futile, elaborate escape from personal responsibility. In that moment, the true, profound nature of the cosmic rivalry was laid bare. It was not a battle between equals. It was the inevitable, impersonal friction between the god of change, Poseidon, the Earthshaker, the Stormbringer, and the goddess of cycle, the moon, the Tidemaker, the eternal return. The moon represented the stable, functional rhythm Poseidon's chaos perpetually threatened. Her existence, her very nature, was a continuous, silent correction of his tempestuous, disruptive power. She was his cosmic antagonist not by choice, but by necessity. Her control over the tide was the universe's way of ensuring that his fury did not utterly destroy the world, a permanent external governor placed upon his boundless might. Poseidon's reaction was not another storm, but a soundless, tectonic shudder that ran through the entire ocean floor. The hatred did not vanish. It simply changed form. It transformed from an active, burning desire for vengeance into a cold, eternal resentment, an acknowledgement that he was fundamentally, perpetually, and inescapably bound to the very force that had caused him the most pain. He could never defeat the moon, for to defeat her would be to break the cosmic cycle and destroy his own kingdom entirely, a fate he had narrowly avoided thanks to Thalassa. Thalassa, witnessing the silent, immense pain of her god, quietly retreated, leaving him alone in the crystallized grotto with his devastating truth. Her task was done. She had averted the superquakes, and in doing so, condemned Poseidon to his eternal, self-aware punishment. The moon goddess offered a final, parting statement, a cold, hard fact that solidified the new cosmic order. The ocean is now heavier, Lord Poseidon. Your sorrow and rage have made it so. You are now the master of a domain that forever reflects your broken heart. And your kingdom, always volatile, will be eternally bound to my pull. For I am the one force that keeps your self-made chaos from swallowing the earth whole. And with that, she withdrew, the gravitational pressure easing, leaving only the sound of the world's newly turbulent, heavier tide. The hatred was now a foundational truth of the sea. Every rogue wave, every turbulent current, every difficult prayer, a silent, perpetual echo of Poseidon's self-inflicted wound and the moon's inescapable, correcting power. The sea is restless, because its god is eternally resentful, forever constrained by the celestial tether of the moon, a constant, humiliating reminder that he is not the master of his own pulse. This is the true reason why Poseidon hated the moon. It was the mirror that showed him his own fault, the cosmic governor that dictated his power, and the indifferent hand that took the only being who could ever truly calm his restless soul. And the sea, our ocean, will forever bear the heavy, salty mark of this ancient, tragic, and eternal cosmic grudge. But the story has one final, lasting legacy. What became of Thalassa, the brave mortal priestess who saved the world from the wrath of her own god? That final, poignant twist is the quiet conclusion to this forbidden legend. The silence that followed the moon goddess's final, crushing truth was a heavier burden than any rogue wave Poseidon had ever weathered. He now understood. The hatred he had carefully cultivated was a cosmic feedback loop, a self-imposed prison built on a foundational lie. He was the perpetual source of the chaos, and the moon was the relentless, impersonal correction. The sea, once his pride, was now a constant mirror reflecting his own shame, its turbulence his temper, its increased salinity the bitterness of his self-deception. Yet, even as he accepted this crushing truth, a subtle, profound change occurred in the grotto of silent grief. As Thalassa quietly retreated, the small, rhythmic seashell she had left by Amphitrite's marble slab began to absorb the residual divine ichor and the crystallized energy from Poseidon's recent agony. It didn't crack or glow. Instead, it began to emit a faint, ghostly, counter-gravitational pulse, a silent, rhythmic beat that resonated only with the moon's distant pull. This was the birth of the ghost tide, a localized, minute counterforce that Poseidon, in his new, self-aware state of profound regret, learned to perceive and nurture. He realized he could not break the moon's control, but he could use the residual memory of the Chronos Anchor, contained within the shell, to subtly modulate the chaos he had created. He could not stop the rogue waves entirely, but he could anticipate their formation, creating tiny, localized eddies or countercurrents to soften their impact, to guide them away from coastal cities, or to break their colossal forms just before landfall. The hatred remained, it was eternal, fundamental, but the expression of that hatred changed. It became a duty of penance, a silent, unending effort to mitigate the damage caused by his own pride. Poseidon became the sea's quiet guardian against his own rage, forever working in the shadow of the moon's unwavering light, performing a secret, tireless penance for the death of his love. He would never be free of the moon's pull, but he could choose to manage the chaos he inflicted upon his own domain. This shift from active vengeance to silent guardianship was the final, tragic layer to his character, cementing him as the eternally restless, deeply sorrowful king of a turbulent sea. The moon goddess, observing this transformation from the distant heavens, saw not an act of surrender, but an act of balance. Poseidon had finally accepted his role as the chaotic force and her role as the stabilizing cycle. The ancient rivalry was settled, not by victory or defeat, but by the establishment of a permanent, tense equilibrium. Her relentless pull would ensure the existence of the tides, and his eternal sorrow would ensure the existence of the rogue waves and the sea's temperamental nature. The world's oceans achieved a state of volatile stability, a perpetual dance between celestial order and divine remorse. The true tragedy is that Poseidon, the Earthshaker, is now eternally bound to a kingdom that serves as a constant, heavy reminder of his greatest mistake, his most profound loss, and his ultimate subservience to the cold, indifferent law of gravity. The hatred lives on, not in epic storms, but in the subtle ways the sea resists the moon. When a storm surge is slightly less destructive than predicted, or when a massive wave breaks harmlessly offshore, that is the ghost tide at work, Poseidon's silent, eternal apology for Amphitrite's death and his penance for his pride. That is the hatred transformed into a burden of care. The sea is restless, not because it is undirected, but because its ruler is tirelessly struggling against the cosmic chains he forged himself. And what of the brave mortal, Thalassa, who saved the world from her own god's wrath? She was not rewarded with immortality or power. Instead, Poseidon, acknowledging her wisdom and courage, bestowed upon her a more subtle, enduring gift, the permanent clarity of perception. Thalassa was granted the ability to hear the ghost tide, to read the true intentions of the sea beneath the chaotic surface. She became the first true maritime prophetess, able to predict the formation of rogue waves and the severity of storms with uncanny accuracy. Her descendants became the revered seers of the ancient world, their warnings taken seriously by sailors who noticed that her predictions were never based on the moon cycle, but on the sea's secret, chaotic pulse. They were the only mortals who understood that the sea's greatest danger came not from nature, but from its god's internal, eternal struggle against the heavens. So, the next time you stand on the shore and watch the tides rise and fall, remember this forbidden legend. The rhythmic pull is the moon's eternal command, the cold, indifferent law of the cosmos. But the sudden, unpredictable surge, the raw, heavy temper of the water, is the echo of Poseidon's eternal hatred, a hatred born from a tragedy of his own making, transformed into a constant, crushing penance. It is the sound of the sea god forever struggling against the chains of his own pride, forever mourning the loss that the moon, in her silent, cold, mathematical necessity, delivered. The sea is restless, heavy, and unforgiving, because its king is eternally resentful, bound to the celestial body he hates most. The story of why Poseidon hated the moon is not a tale of simple rivalry. It is the tragic, defining legend of a god who lost everything because he refused to accept that in the vast, indifferent universe, even the master of the oceans must obey the silent, cold command of the celestial light. The eternal battle continues, etched into every wave, every drop of salt, a testament to the devastating power of pride and the quiet, crushing force of cosmic law. The final, echoing piece of this ancient, tragic myth concerns the irreversible physical scars left on the world's oceans by the god of the sea's struggle for vengeance and his subsequent, agonizing self-recognition. While Poseidon accepted his penance, forever tasked with mitigating the chaos he created, the trauma of the Chronos Anchor's crystallization and the moon goddess's final, cold judgment cemented a strange, eternal chemical warfare at the very foundations of the deep. We must now turn our gaze to the most isolated and mysterious realms of Poseidon's kingdom, the abyssal zones and the deep ocean trenches, those parts of the sea where the light of the sun is a forgotten memory and the pressure is a crushing geological weight. Before the rivalry escalated to the use of the Chronos Anchor, these zones were the Earthshaker's primal hearth. They were warm, vibrant with life sustained by geothermal vents, drawing fiery energy from the Earth's magma core, perfectly reflecting Poseidon's raw, potent, tectonic nature. They were his secret fortresses of raw power. However, the catastrophic rebound of his divine fury, the energy meant for the superquakes violently collapsing inward, and the subsequent rapid petrification of the anchor at the abyssal vent site fundamentally and permanently cooled these deepest trenches. This was not merely a temperature change. It was a profound, irreversible thermochemical alteration of the oceanic environment, a geological consequence of a god's psychic trauma. The deepest parts of the sea, once reflecting Poseidon's inner heat, became utterly, unnaturally cold, heavy, and silent. The sea life that managed to survive this rapid, unnatural glaciation adapted by evolving into the strange, slow-moving, and often blind creatures, the very essence of the deep-sea abyss we know today. They became the living embodiments of Poseidon's frozen grief. They move slowly because they are literally swimming through water that is perpetually heavy, infused with the residue of his crystallizing pain. But the most compelling evidence of the cosmic skirmish lies not in the life, but in the dead architecture of the abyss. Submersible probes, in the deep-sea explorations of future mortals, would eventually uncover strange, impossibly cold, geometric formations scattered across the abyssal plains. These are not geological structures. They are perfectly shaped, towering crystalline shards that seem to actively draw faint, cold, silvery light into themselves, only to emit a pure, rhythmic, countergravitational pulse. These formations are the tears of Poseidon, the crystalline remnants of his concentrated divine ichor and crystallized sorrow, which rained down from the Dead Sea depths after the moon goddess accelerated the erosion. These tears, now chemically solidified by the moon's amplified, chilling influence, act as natural, scattered amplifiers for the ghost tide. They ensure that even at the very bottom of the world, in the deepest, most inaccessible solitude, Poseidon's struggle for stability continues. They are the silent warriors of the deep, battling the moon's relentless gravitational pull in a constant, unseen, chemical and physical warfare that dictates the pressure and temperature stability of the entire oceanic floor. Every one of these crystals is a reminder of his loss, his pride, and his defeat, yet simultaneously a small, self-imposed tool for penance. This discovery reveals the full scope of the cosmic bargain struck through pain. Poseidon's hatred and sorrow did not disappear. They were physically transferred and codified into the very chemistry of the deep ocean. The sea is restless on the surface due to the moon's pull and the rogue waves, but it is silent and frozen at the bottom due to Poseidon's internal agony. The moon goddess won because her force, gravity, is fundamental and impersonal. Poseidon lost because his force, pride, and chaos was personal and self-destructive. His tears, made solid and cold by his celestial rival, now ironically help him maintain a volatile, yet functional, balance. The next time you hear a strange report from the deepest trenches of unusually cold water or impossibly perfect cold crystals, know that you are hearing the final physical echo of a god's profound, self-inflicted sorrow. You are witnessing the enduring, foundational chemistry of a hatred that was born from tragic love and solidified by cosmic law, a hatred that turned the magnificent kingdom of the sea into a vast, heavy, and eternally mournful domain. The deep ocean is cold, because the king who created it is eternally locked in a battle of eternal cycle against the burden of unending regret. The cosmic silence surrounding Poseidon's eternal penance was, in itself, a profound tragedy. Why did the other Olympians, Zeus, Hera, Athena, the supreme rulers of the cosmos, never intervene in this crippling, self-destructive war between the sea god and the moon goddess? Why did they allow the sea to become perpetually volatile, the earth's depths to freeze, and their powerful brother to be condemned to endless, solitary grief? The answer lies in a forgotten Olympian decree known as the Edict of the Golden Age, a foundational law established immediately after the Titanomachy, designed to prevent the new gods from repeating the catastrophic, world-shattering battles of their predecessors. The edict stipulated that conflicts between core elemental domains, the sky, the sea, and the underworld, could never be fought with direct, overwhelming force, lest the entire cosmos be torn apart. More critically, it contained a secret clause. Any god who sought to fundamentally alter a primal natural law, such as gravity or momentum, as Poseidon did with the Chronos Anchor, would be subject to cosmic quarantine. This meant the other gods were barred from interference, condemned to merely watch the conflict unfold. They could not aid Poseidon, nor could they challenge the moon goddess's subsequent, necessary corrections. Their hands were tied by their own supreme law, making Poseidon's agony a public, yet unhelpable, spectacle. This Olympian non-intervention was a source of deep, festering secondary resentment for Poseidon. He saw their silence not as obedience to law, but as cold, uncaring apathy, confirming his isolation. He felt betrayed by his own family, who allowed him to be humiliated by the silent, indifferent force of the moon. And in a final, quiet act of passive-aggressive revenge, Poseidon subtly used his power as the earthshaker to influence the quality of the coastal soil near the most prominent Olympian temples. He subtly infused the soil with the volatile, saline residue from the Chronos Anchor's distributed fragments. The result? The coastal regions, the very places mortals built their grand temples to Zeus and Athena, became prone to soil instability, sudden landslides, and unexplained drought cycles that would briefly, yet consistently, blight the surrounding farmlands. This was Poseidon's slow-moving geological protest. If his domain was to be chaotic and difficult, he would ensure that the lands most beloved by his aloof siblings would be subtly, unpredictably unstable. This explains why so many ancient Mediterranean cities, built near the sea and worshipping the Olympians, suffered from sudden, inexplicable declines and had to constantly rebuild. It was the quiet, ongoing sabotage of the resentful sea god, a consequence of the Edict of the Golden Age and the moon's immutable law. Even today, when engineers study the instability of coastal lands, they are often unknowingly grappling with the final, physical echo of Poseidon's enduring secondary resentment toward his family, who stood by and watched as the moon condemned him to an eternity of restless, lonely penance. The sea is restless, not just because of the moon, but because its ruler still secretly shakes the earth in a silent, unending protest against the Olympian gods who failed to save him.